Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel to Tennis Time. Today I'm going to have a very special edition. I've invited Gil Gross onto the show. He's the host of one of the best YouTube shows on tennis out there, on Monday Match Analysis, and we're going to break down the Pete Sampras and Boris Becker 1996 Year-End Championship final. At the beginning, we talk a little bit about our impressions of the match, our impressions of that era, what was at stake in 1996 for Becker, for Sampras, and who were those guys actually throughout their careers during that year in 1996. There's that a historical context for that encounter. Also, we talk through the match, set by set. We analyze the most important key points, and in the end we also digress a little bit to talk about today's tennis, the modern tennis, how it's played today and how it used to be back in the 90s, and what the differences are between the two eras. As I said, I really enjoyed doing this conversation. I'm very thankful to Gil that he agreed to come onto the show. Hopefully we can do this some other time as well. In the meantime, I hope you'll enjoy the conversation as well. Enjoy.
Tibor, pleasure to be here. Very happy to be on your channel and excited to get into this.
All right. So, I suggested that we go through and look at one of my favorite matches of all time. That's the Pete Sampras Boris Becker ATP World Tour Finals contest. Let's call it like World Tour Finals. Back then, the name of it, I think, was Masters Cup or ATP World Tour Championship, something of the sort. Today, it's the ATP Nitto Finals. Mm-hmm. So, from a player's perspective or from a historic perspective, do you want to say a few words about your take on it?
Sure. Well, for Becker, it was somewhat of a resurgence in 1996 because he hadn't won a Grand Slam title in 5 years, and he wins the Australian Open this year. Right. So it's already a successful season for Becker right off the bat to start, and Sampras is kind of the other way around because he salvages his year at the end of 1996 by winning the U.S. Open. And he had been quite dominant, through the early and the mid 90s. So it would have been a real almost lost year for Sampras had he not captured that title. He had this classic quarterfinal match, also where he threw up in the fifth set, went to a tiebreak. So it was quite the triumph in the U.S. Open. So now these two meet, both major title winners from the season. And this is on indoor carpet, and there's no doubt, Tibor, that the two best fast court players in the world at this time were Sampras and Becker.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. So the Aussie Open champion and US Open champion basically met at the World Tour Finals in the final. Incidentally, they also met in the round robin stages because they were drawn in the same group. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the fact that but Becker won that one in 2 tiebreakers, actually. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I agree with what you said for Becker. It was a resurgence since he's won the Aussie Open at the beginning of the year. When he started playing that tournament, I actually remember that one because I wasn't going to school those weeks. I was sick and watching tennis at home. I remember he was playing Ruzetsky in the first round. He was 2-1 down, and then he played Thomas Johansson, the 2002 Aussie Open champion, and he was 2-love down. And he came back, and after that, in the next 5 matches, he's lost just 2 sets. It was a little bit unfortunate for him because he was doing pretty well at Queen's. He's won the tournament. He's beaten Edberg in the final. And he had a very nasty injury, wrist injury at Wimbledon. So his year was a little bit, I wouldn't say destroyed, but he looked like he was really on his way back and to his winning ways. But then he was lucky enough to get a win in Vienna and in Stuttgart. Stuttgart was a pretty big tournament back then. It's the equivalent of what we have in Shanghai today. And he's beaten Sampras actually in that final. So he was 2 sets to 1 down in the final, and he's come back. Incidentally, back in the day, these Masters finals were played, most of them at least, still best of 5.
Sampras after that match said, "Look, Becker is the best fast court player I've ever played." So there was a mutual respect here, and then just to add something to the injury that Becker sustained at Wimbledon, this was probably Becker's chance to win the title had he not been injured, because Sampras was knocked out in the quarterfinals to Richard Krajicek.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was unfortunate for Boris.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually looked at both players' careers from a head-to-head perspective as well. And from a title-winning perspective. So Becker, he's won 49 titles throughout his career, and 20 of those were on indoor carpet. Sampras has won 64 tournaments and 23 came on indoor hard. So that shows that the proportion of tournaments won by Becker is really quite high on these fast indoor carpet surfaces. Okay, well, having said that, Becker at the time was a 6-time Grand Slam champion, and he's won the year-end championships 3 times before that and was 4 times in the final. So he really knew his way around the courts at the time. Sampras at that point was an 8-time Grand Slam champion, current world number 1, and I think he won 2 year-end championships at that time. He was going for his 3rd in 96, and he's had 1 more final in 93. In the round-robin matches, both had 1 loss. Sampras lost to Becker, and Becker lost in the round-robin stage against Thomas Enqvist, the Swedish player. And before they started to play the final, from a head-to-head perspective, Sampras was leading 9-7. And when I looked at the head-to-head, I was really surprised in the sense that they've played 19 times throughout their careers in total. And those 7 matches which Becker has won, all 7 were indoor on an indoor match, indoor hard court. So all time, Becker leads Sampras 7-6 indoors. And other times when they've met, outdoor hard, Sampras leads 2-love. Outdoor grass, 3-love to Sampras. All matches were at Wimbledon, and they've met once on clay, which was also won by Sampras.
Yeah, I mean Becker wouldn't have been very happy with the current state of the tour with how the courts are now, especially that they've gotten rid of his favorite surface, arguably, which is carpet.
Yeah, that's right. Right, so what is it from your perspective, Gil? Because you weren't watching much tennis in the 90s, right?
That's right.
Watching now the match today, looking back, what was your impression of watching that really aggressive serve and volley type of play?
Like of the overall play style?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I mean, so both players had very little success returning, especially when it comes to the first serve return. Especially, I would say Pete Sampras had tons of trouble returning serve in this match. But the overall impression is that, one, you have exceptional volleying on display. And I'm not sure we get that art performed at such a high level in the modern game anymore. I mean, both these players were so athletic at the net. They were so opportune with their volleys, and they could consistently make difficult volleys. And it's just a different perspective now, because it's so easy for a lot of the modern baseliners to finish points from the baseline. They see no reason to really approach the net. One, risk getting past, but also they would rather stay back and rip forehands. And these two would really rather come in and maybe play a low volley that they can't finish, but then they can finish the next volley. The serving was also exceptional. These two are some of the greatest servers of all time. But the margins were so thin when you have two players on such a fast surface who serve and volley so well. So that's why it's no surprise that this match came down to a couple points.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think something else what we don't really see anymore on these indoor courts, and especially at the end of the year-end championships, you've probably noticed that they don't have the doubles alley. I mean, the court is just made for singles play.
Yep.
We don't see really that anymore. I think in 2003 in Houston, they introduced that the doubles is going to be played at the same time the singles is being played, and they got rid of that kind of court.
Yeah, the court made a reappearance at the Next Gen Finals,
right?
The last 2 years, and
that's right.
I really do enjoy the aesthetic of it. A lot of people are thrown off by it, especially. I know I tweeted out a picture for my Twitter followers last year, and a lot of people who don't follow tennis were like, "What is that court? What is wrong with the court?"
Yeah.
So, but I do like it.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. Okay. So something else I noticed, and I was wondering about, did you used to watch matches where the Cyclops was still used?
No, well, there might have been a short period, but most of my tennis watching memories are without the Cyclops, and it's what do you think of it?
Well, when it went away and Hawkeye came in, it sort of made sense. But then again, I felt that Cyclops was a pretty good thing because that was taking the pressure off of the lines people calling the first serve, especially those really fast booming serves. So I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah, I really do like the Hawkeye system, what they have now, and there's so many opportunities for data collection. I actually watched a documentary this week about Hawkeye, and how small the margin of error is, and it's about 3.6 centimeters, the margin of error on Hawkeye. So it does exist, and it can change calls, and it's not necessarily true that every single call is correct. But for the most part, the opportunity that we have with data collection from Hawkeye, and also the speed at which Hawkeye operates, is something that we take for granted in tennis. If you watch, some other sports, especially American sports, like American football, baseball, the replay systems that they have in place, and even in basketball and the NBA, it takes a very long time for the officials to go over to a monitor and to check their calls. Hawkeye is so instantaneous that I do think it's a wonderful system overall.
I like the Hawkeye system as well. The only difference between that and getting totally rid of the Cyclops is it's really up to the player to make the challenge. Because if the player thinks, okay, I'm going with the call what the lines person was saying, and I'm not challenging, then I might miss something. If the Cyclops still would be in place, then you probably would have a very good chance that it would go off if the serve is out, But I understand that mixing the two technologies, that would make things even a little bit more confusing for the watchers and for the spectators, basically.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, there have been some examples of matches that have been swung by players' decisions to challenge or to not challenge, and that's questionable. I don't know if that's what we want deciding tennis matches, but it's also so rare that tennis is one of the most fair games in the world. You have net cords, you have the occasional, bad lines call, but for the most part, I think tennis is one of the most fair games in the world, but no sport can be completely 100% fair.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I'm not sure if you noticed chair umpire was holding his device in his hand. He had actually two devices in his hands, and I was thinking, okay, this is something again what Gil probably did not see on a regular basis, because especially on the high-end tournaments, Grand Slams, you definitely will have a chair for the umpire where he has all his devices locked to some part of the chair, and he doesn't have to hold things in his hands, and it's not that difficult for him.
Yeah, you would think that they could have figured that out even in '96, but
Right.
apparently
Exactly.
not.
Yeah. All right. Good. So if we go into the match and into the first set, so what's your take on the first set?
Well, the break comes at 1-2, with Sampras serving, and Boris hits two spectacular return winners, one on the forehand side, one on the backhand side. And then even on break point, he had a pretty blistering return deep down the middle, and Sampras couldn't handle the next shot. That was the best return game by either player all match. That game right there. The returns that Becker strung together, I don't think he was able to do that again for the entire match. On the other hand, when Boris was serving, he was spectacular on his serve in this set. He hit 8 aces in the set, and whenever he got in a hole, whenever he got into a 30-all situation or something like that, he always came out of it really with his serve alone.
Yeah, that's right. It was an incredibly efficient set by Becker. He had created those break points. He has taken the very first chance he's got, and that was basically enough for him to win the first set with that single break to 6-3. And Sampras never really had any chance to break back. And you're right, throughout the whole match, even if Becker's percentage of first serves wasn't really above 60% or something, but he was so efficient that he was winning 90% of his first serves throughout a match which lasted 4 hours. So that's really quite spectacular. I agree with that.
What did you think? I have a question for you. What did you think of? So Becker is serving it out at 5-3. And it's 30-all, and Becker hits a brilliant drop volley on the stretch, but he apologizes afterwards, which makes it seem like it was mishit. And maybe this is the camera technology, but I couldn't quite see a mishit. But was that your interpretation, that it hit the frame, it hit Becker's frame, and it was actually a lucky drop volley at 30-all? Because Sampras would have had break point.
Yeah, that's right. I thought that was what happened because Becker apologized, and the drop volley was really so outstandingly good that even if it wasn't really a miss hit, I think Becker was saying to Sampras, "Look, I really didn't intend to hit it that well."
Yeah. Perhaps. So that was the biggest point of the match, and or excuse me, of the first set.
Of the set.
Yeah. Yep. And perhaps a little bit of luck on Becker's side there.
Yeah, and the way he finished that first set with that rally where he hit a wonderful backhand down the line, that was really spectacular, right? So let's move on to the second set. So how did you see the match progress in set 2?
Well, so there's a break chance at 2-3, the first time Sampras really digs into a Becker service game, and just like he had been doing all match, Boris just erased it with his serve. He hit 2 aces, and then at deuce he had a service winner. At in, he hit another service winner. And then from there, it was pretty straightforward until the tiebreak. You know, we reach a point in the match where I do think Becker is playing a little bit better than Pete, but the Sampras serve, it picks up. It picks up, and he's really efficient at the net. So I don't think that he's getting as many free points as Boris, but Sampras, he never really plays a loose game. At any point, he never really has a game where he makes more than than really a single error. So these two hold serve until the tiebreak somewhat easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree. If you look back at what happened the round before, in the round robin where they played, and Becker won in straight sets, winning 7-6, 7-6. Now winning the first set again, 6-3, and in their match prior to Hanover in Stuttgart, where he's beaten Sampras in 5 sets there. He's won the last 2 sets. So basically, he's won 5 sets on a stretch against Sampras. And I think at this point, Sampras knew that he really has to pick it up. He's not allowed to lose serve. And if he does, then it's probably going to be curtains, even if it's a best of 5 set and he still can win the next 3. But he knew that the chances of coming back would be really low if he would lose that set. So I agree, they go into the tiebreak, and there was something I noticed what is quite spectacular. So Sampras did have the break points, as you mentioned, and Becker did erase them. And as they went on and held their service games relatively easily, and when they were in a tiebreak, Becker, up until to the tiebreak, until the point he's lost 1 point on his serve in the tiebreak, he's won 18 points straight on his serve. So that's really incredible. And that was that one single mini break which actually did cost him the tiebreak and the set. And Sampras was really holding firm. I'm not sure if you've noticed or you remember at the end of the second set where Sampras serves and volleys and wins the final point of the second set, that scream which came out of him was it's a little bit unusual of him, but you felt that he knew that was important.
Yeah, well, Becker, it's funny. Brad Gilbert actually, in his book Winning Ugly, talks about the Becker scream and how blood curdling it is, if I can use, if that's the term I'd use. But yeah, Becker, his backhand return failed him in this tiebreak. If you watch a lot of the points that Sampras won, he got a lot of free points off the Becker backhand return. And then on the set point, another example of just one that Becker really floated. He didn't get good contact on the ball. But if I can go back to the mini break, more specifically at 2-3, I think there were a couple of factors at play. So Becker's serving, and he serves down the tee to Sampras's forehand. And Sampras hits kind of a block return, and I don't think he really hits it cleanly. But that might work in his favor because the ball kind of dips down, and it's way towards the sideline. So Becker has to range to his right towards the sideline to hit this volley. And I think Becker makes a huge error here volleying the ball deep. In general, you volley the ball deep when you want to set up the next volley. When you're not really trying to finish, but you're trying to set up the next shot. If you want to finish the point, you want to volley short in the service box. And because Becker was way off the court near the sideline, he really should have tried to finish the point with this next volley. And instead, he volleys it deep, which enables Sampras to really, when Sampras hits his running pass, he has the whole court open down the line, and it's a relatively easy pass for Pete. I really think Boris should have selected a different volley there, and he should have gone short in the court.
Yeah, that was one mistake he's made, and it really cost him the set. So this shows really how important the serve was in this match and in the set especially. All right, so it's 1-all, 2 sets played going into the third set. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that this is pretty similar. I mean, I have once again 2-3 is another troublesome game, and you know where it's 15-30 at one point, and Sampras is able to get out of it with, again, his serve. He hits a service winner, then he hits an ace, then it gets back to deuce, and at deuce, Sampras hits a forehand winner and a serve +1, another forehand winner. And then again, it goes to the tiebreak. What's incredible here is Becker does not lose a single point. a single point on his first serve in this set. Still, he can't do enough on return. And I think that Becker is holding easier than Pete on a regular basis. And, I think this continues for most of the match, but Becker did not lose a single point. Sampras, on his first serve, Sampras is employing a rather aggressive return strategy. And it's feast or famine. He doesn't want to play defense. He doesn't want to run. So he feels that he needs to be aggressive on his return, especially because Boris is coming in behind, probably over half of his first serves. But Pete's just not making it into the court for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The set, as it progressed, was very similar to the second set, the only exception being that in the previous set, Becker was having the break points, not Sampras having the break points, but both players managed to fend them off quite easily with big serves and solid play. And in the tiebreak, it was Sampras who struck first again, because Becker was serving first in the tiebreak, and on that very first point, Sampras made a mini break, and then he was leading, and he was 4-2 up, and when he was 4-2 up and serving to go 5-2 up, he lost a point, so Becker came back and has broken basically back and has taken the mini break back. But when it was 4-all and Becker was serving, he's hit a double fault. So that double fault was the one what actually cost him that tiebreaker, basically, because in the next 2 points, Sampras serving, he held both his serves and he took the tiebreak 7 points to 4.
Yeah, exactly right, and that goes back to how slim the margins are in this style of play. It was the double fault, and Becker hit more. Actually, I'm forgetting which way this number is, but there were quite a few double faults from Becker in this match, and this was the most costly one.
Yeah, probably he's hit. Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's going to be in the fifth set as well, a very crucial double fault he's going to hit. But this was probably the second most crucial one, which he's hit. He had 8 double faults in total in the match, and Sampras had 5.
Yeah. 8's not, it's not an awful number, especially when, for how big these two serve. But it's a little high, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think if we look at tennis today and the way we expect and we see players serve, we would say it's a high number. Given the fact how these guys really went for it, and it was a 4-hour match, 5 sets.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem that high in the end, I think.
It's all about when they come, right?
Yes,
not how often.
Absolutely. Yeah. So going ahead to set 4. You want to go into it first?
So at Love All, I think that's the game that stands out in this set, because Becker has probably his best game on return since the first set, the game that he actually broke. He hits 3 great returns in this one. It gets him to 1540. And at 1540, he has a forehand volley, around the height of the net, and he just doesn't do enough with that volley and ends up losing the point. And then after that, Pete takes over with a couple of big serve and volleys. So Boris really had a big chance here at 1540 with a forehand volley. Just didn't quite do enough, which is uncharacteristic for Boris.
Yeah, I agree. I've also noted the same thing, that those 3 returns he's hit when he was love 15 down on Sampras' serve, those were really spectacular. So 3 return winners on the first serve of Sampras. It wasn't like Sampras would have missed the first serve or anything, and that's super impressive. And yeah, I agree, it was a little bit unlucky at 1540 when Sampras was serving. That was actually a point played on the second serve, and Becker really had the volley. It wasn't an easy one, but if he would have done more with it, he probably would have broken. He's hit the volley, but the volley stopped on the top of the net. It bounced a little bit higher. That made it easier for Sampras to hit it. When Sampras hit it, the ball clipped the tape again, but he was lucky enough that the ball went in and the break was avoided. So from then on, they again went to the tiebreak pretty swiftly, I would say. But this time the tiebreak was very, very different compared to the first two in the set, wouldn't you say? I mean,
Oh yeah,
the fourth set tiebreak
definitely.
was very different from the set from set two and set three.
I would say both players were dealing with nerves to a greater extent in this tiebreak. It showed early. You know, you had more passiveness from both players at certain points in this tiebreak. And that's not how Becker or Sampras wants to play or should play. But
Yeah.
When the nerves reach the highest level, sometimes that's what we see. It was an epic tiebreak, and I think that's a common theme in a lot of the greatest matches in the sport's history, especially in the 5-set format. If you think about 1984 between Borg and McEnroe at Wimbledon, that's an example. Or you have Federer and Nadal at Wimbledon in 2008. Some of the greatest matches of all time feature these long, epic fourth set tiebreaks, and this is another match in that category.
Yeah, you've done a breakdown on this Borg McEnroe final as well, right? With Steve Flink, if I remember correctly.
That was, oh, you know what? I got the year wrong.
It was 1980.
1980. I was thinking, right. The one with Steve Flink was the 84 Lendl McEnroe French Open.
Ah, right.
Final.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it was. We were saying in set 2 and 3 that there were so few mini breaks and each player holding serve really well in the tiebreak. Here, it was a tiebreak where it went 13-11, I think, for Becker, and more than 10 points were lost on serve, basically. So it's a really huge turnaround, and I would tend to agree with what you said before, that the nerves kicked in, and both players have felt it quite hard. And I don't know, if you think back at the 1980 Wimbledon final, what you were mentioning, where there was an epic tiebreak and Borg lost the tiebreak against McEnroe 18-16. And Borg was leading 2-1. He had so many match points, he's lost them. He somehow felt that, okay, the momentum is now with McEnroe, and McEnroe has to take the 5th set. I had a little bit of a similar feeling here, because Sampras, he didn't have 5 or 6 match points like Borg did, but he had 2. And one of them was on his own serve at 6-5. And he missed those chances. And I had the impression that, okay, history might repeat itself. He had the same story in Stuttgart, where he was 2-1 up against Becker and he lost the next 2. Now a similar story might occur. But going now into the final and 5th set, what are your thoughts on the 5th set, Gil?
Well, I tend to agree with you about the momentum, and especially because of the crowd. And I think the crowd from the first ball was incredible. The atmosphere in favor of Boris Becker in Hanover, it was a substantial pillar for Sampras to overcome, because every time it was love 15 on his service game, you'd get the rhythmic clapping from 15,000 people. That's a powerful thing, to be reminded every time you're down in a service game by the crowd, even a small hole like love 15 or even a 15 all point, the crowd would kind of be murmuring whenever Becker got into a Sampras service game. So with physicality being a factor, and adrenaline, and with the crowd the way it was, I agree with you that you would think that Becker might have an edge in the 5th set after saving the 2 match points in the fourth set tiebreak. And the way the fourth set tiebreak ended, where Pete had a forehand volley that you would expect to make,
Yeah.
you would expect him to make 10 out of 10 times. It was like, I mean, you know, Sampras, Edberg, you can have a debate over the greatest volleyers of all time, McEnroe, but the, that was just a stunning volley for Sampras to
Yeah.
miss.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was another factor here. Um, the fifth set, I suppose, though, we should kind of start at 4-all, right?
Yeah, but maybe one more thing before we get to 4-all. Normally, when a player starts first in the fifth set, it's considered to be an advantage, right? Even though you're playing a tiebreak set, you're the one who is ahead all the time, and somehow it can give you a little bit of an edge. But here in this match, I had the impression that it was an advantage for Sampras because Becker was serving first. It's not really characteristic for Sampras to get jaded or really very much down on himself. But I think this loss of the tiebreak has had an effect on him, and he was lucky that that Becker was serving first because he had a game to wake up. In the next game, he was lost 30 down but dug it out, and then from that point on, it was really interesting starting at 4-all in the fifth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Tibor, and I can subscribe to that. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's nice to feel the ball a couple times and settle back into a normal tennis rhythm with a normal heart rate
Mm-hmm.
after disappointment like that in the fourth set, and when tensions rise so high, there can sometimes be a bit of a hangover uh, or a bit of a lull at the start of the next set. So it might have been a good thing that Sampras was on
Mm-hmm.
return.
Yeah. So at 4-all, that's where it really got interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, 4-all, Sampras is putting a bunch of serves in play. I believe there were a fair bit of second serves from Becker. Um, but Becker saves one break point, 30-40, with a beautiful serve and volley. Then at deuce, Sampras makes a really great down the line return that put Becker on a defensive scramble, and then eventually Becker, about 7 feet behind the baseline, misses a defensive backhand slice. It's this forehand return down the line on the deuce side that Sampras missed time and time again in this match, but made it a couple times in this game. I think that he would have been well suited at certain points in this match to aim for safer targets on the first serve return in this game, even with Becker coming in. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I think Sampras tried to pass Becker instead of just trying to get the ball low. But in this game, he finally timed that change of direction forehand down the line return on the deuce side a couple times, and he did it at this point in deuce, which put Becker on the defensive right away. And then on break point, Sampras hits a really nice low return. He was able to take pace off the ball. Becker was coming in behind the serve. And I thought Boris hit a pretty nice first volley. He got it deep in the
Mm-hmm.
court. He did what
Mm-hmm.
he had to do, and he put it on Pete's weaker wing, the backhand side.
Yeah.
And Sampras was up to the task and hit a gorgeous, stinging backhand passing shot down the line. And for the first time in 27 games, Sampras broke Becker.
Yeah. That's a very beautiful way of putting it, in the sense that the match was really going on for such a long time. It's really unusual, even on a such fast court like this one, to not to have really any breaks for 5 sets. There was only one single break in the entire set, and that came in the third game of the match, right? And now at 4-all in the final set, that's where it really counts, doesn't it? And it speaks to Sampras' abilities as a match player, that he really can choose to hit his best and finest shots in the most crucial moments. And you're right, that backhand down the line was absolutely exquisite, which he's hit at breakpoint, and there was the scream again from him, just like when he realized that he's won the second set, and he was really, really ecstatic about it. And
Sampras
now
was
again,
Sampras was so good at raising his level, and a lot of players who played against Pete will say, look, holding serve against Sampras at love all or 1-all, 2-all, 3-all, that's one thing, and it's so much easier. But then once you get to 4-all, 5-all, it becomes so much harder to hold serve against Sampras. He was really excellent at sometimes almost conserving his energy and saving his best stuff for the end of sets. In this case, the end of the match.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure if this was also part of, or this was can be contributed to the fact that he had some sort of a anemic disease, Sampras. He talks about it in his book. It's a disease called thalassemia. It's sort of probably a genetic thing in the sense that a lot of people in the Mediterranean have it. He's of Greek origin, and I'm not sure if you've noticed the concoctions he had and he was drinking that had that strange purple color. So those were portions he was mixing for himself to hang in there. So I was sometimes thinking maybe the reason because he doesn't really put that much effort into it, or the way he developed his style of play is maybe can be contributed to that fact. But this is just a theory. I'm not really sure about it, but it's interesting to think about that.
Perhaps I think that there are some players, that can really take from what Pete did, and Sampras just made sure that he was not going to waste energy, and
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it worked because of the style of play he had. I don't think, I think a player who's more of a baseliner, more of a grinder, I think needs to put in 100% at every point. But I think when Pete was down 30 love on a return game, he did not want to do much running. And if he had a forehand, he was going to try to hit a winner pretty much every time if the score
Yeah,
was 30 love against him. And
absolutely.
and that's how he ensured, he did not want to lose a match because he gassed out. And that's kind of how he ensured that that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I was saying when we were talking about the third set that there was going to be another crucial double fault in this game at 4-all where Becker was serving. He went love 30 down, and at love 15 he was serving another double fault. So I think this was again a crucial point from a double fault perspective. Becker has made a costly error.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that 5-4, Sampras up serving for it. I think that was also a very beautiful game, the way he finished the match, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was a 24 shot rally on match point.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the big points that Sampras played in this match, I don't think that he would have been completely happy with himself in some cases. In this particular point, Pete hit some great running forehands where,
Yeah.
and he has a way. He doesn't really defend when he's on the run on his forehand side. He really likes to counterattack. But he hit a couple of those in this match. Becker was really brilliantly staying in the point. It was a great baseline rally. But Sampras, on some of the biggest points in the match, was actually staying back. And in many cases, it ended with Sampras overcooking forehands, hitting forehands long. I can think of a couple points in that fourth set tiebreak
Tiebreak, yeah.
where that happened.
Yeah.
In this case, it was Becker who made the final error on his backhand side, trying to go down the line and doing some damage with his backhand, and it hit the tape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that 24 shot rally you mentioned, that was really a very, very good rally and very good, yeah, way of seeing that wonderful 5-set match to end. Maybe it's a little bit of a shame that it had to finish on an error. Becker hit a backhand basically into the net. It was a very similar shot, what he's hit, where he won the first set, the final shot on the backhand.
Yep.
But nonetheless, you're right, very much on point with your analysis on that final point.
Yeah, if you step back and you look at the match, total points, Becker won 178 and Pete won 166.
66, yeah.
That's a pretty big deficit. You don't often see, it's not too rare, especially in points with tie breaks, that you'll see perhaps someone with, who, let's say, won 5 fewer points win a match. But that is a pretty significant deficit for Sampras, for someone who won the match. And I think that a lot of the stats here favored Becker, including aces, which was 30-15 in favor of Boris, and the first serve points won percentage, 90% from Becker. It's really incredible that Pete was able to dig this out with the crowd against him, to be resilient, to come up with clutch serving, and to win, 2 tie breaks in the second and the third set, and to ultimately get the break finally at 4-all in the fifth.
Yeah. Maybe just to conclude, I remember watching the press conference on German television when the match was finished, and Becker said that it was an absolute pleasure to play this match, and he thinks this is the best match he's ever played in his entire life. Even though he came up short, he's really proud of his own performance.
I think both players were. They had a lot of fun out there, and that a lot of that just comes from the atmosphere. It was, I wonder if this match would have been as well remembered if it wasn't in Boris's home country with this incredible crowd. It was a great match regardless, but the atmosphere, I think, put it over the top and made it so much fun for both players to compete, and they delivered. They delivered this incredible match, so they both felt great about the show they had put on at the end of the year.
Absolutely, I agree. It was really an amazing atmosphere. When you watched the match, which broadcast did you find?
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't find any in English. I found one that had no commentary, so I watched that one. I watched that one. I completely got the natural sound of the crowd, and that's all.
All right. Well, that's sometimes a nice way to watch a tennis match where you're not really influenced and you can take it in just the way it's happening.
I prefer good commentary to watching a match without, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, especially with the crowd. The crowd carried it. So if you're gonna watch a match with no commentary, this is a good one to watch.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Kil. Maybe any final thoughts before we end on this?
Well, I'm just curious because if you read the comments on a lot of the highlight videos and stuff from this match, a lot of them are longing for the tennis that was on display here, the style of tennis, which is largely extinct nowadays. And you've been so close to the sport for such a long time. I'm curious to know, do you miss this kind of tennis?
It's an interesting question. Sometimes yes, but other times I say I can live without it, given the fact that we have such an incredibly high level of tennis. It's probably the golden era of tennis ever. I'm not saying that the 90s weren't great. They were great. I grew up with the 90s tennis and I really loved it very much. And if you look back at the 80s or 70s or 60s with Laver, McEnroe, Borg, Lendl, Connors, all these guys, I mean, we can't really complain because the sport had really fantastic characters. But I'm saying I miss it, and I don't because, as I said, it was a very interesting part of watching tennis. I actually remember that when I watched the semi-finals before that, when Becker was playing Krajicek and Sampras was playing Ivan Isevic, both matches went to 3 sets, and there were not a lot of breaks in those matches in those days. And people were saying sometimes that, well, tennis is getting a little bit boring, especially on these really fast, quick surfaces, because if somebody is serving really well and is playing decent serve and volley, then normally those people will come through and win the majority of the matches. And you had to be very lucky to get a match like the Becker Sampras one, because this was really perfect serve and volley put at display for almost 4 hours. But you didn't really get that kind of tennis too many times. So partially I'm saying, yeah, it's a pity that we don't get to see something like this anymore. But on the other hand, I think the way tennis has evolved and what we can see when we see Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray, it can be super spectacular as well. And if I look at the modern tennis today, when we were seeing Tsitsipas, for instance, playing, I think Tsitsipas is a good example of somebody who can mix it up a little bit more, and he's trying to get to the net more. And then you see more points which are spectacular in a way where they are finished at the net. It's not the same type of tennis, but
Yep.
you still see many attempts of approach to go to the net.
Yeah, I mean, Nadal Medvedev in the U.S. Open final last year was there might have been somewhere around 100 net approaches if you combine both players. There were that match was really, I think both players had trouble finishing each other, so they had to go to the net. But to answer my own question, looking back, uh, I I'm happy tennis isn't quite like this anymore. I wouldn't mind if there were some players. I would like if there were some players who still successfully employed the style of a Becker or a Sampras, because I really loved watching. I love watching Agassi, for example, play these players. These serve and volleyers. I think
Yeah.
the contrast in style makes for fascinating matches, and I do love that. But all in all, I think the more when there are more breaks of serve and there are more returns put in play, I do think overall the product is something that I prefer.
Yeah, I can understand that perfectly. To bring up Agassi as an example, playing serve and volley is a fantastic example. There wasn't really anybody like that except of Agassi being such a super aggressive player, but still being a baseliner. So the way he was countering and putting those passing shots past these serve and volleyers, that was always super exciting and interesting. I still think during those times, the servant volleyer had a little bit of an advantage over the returner. Maybe Agassi was a little bit of an exception because he has a winning record against Patrick Rafter, for instance, or against Boris Becker. He doesn't have a winning record against Sampras. And I felt in the Sampras Agassi matchup, for instance, this is one of my favorite topics. Sampras had the advantage because of his great serve. Agassi might have been the greatest returner of his generation, but still, if Sampras' serve was so good, he was the one controlling the points because he was the one who knew where he's going to hit that serve. And Agassi was always the one who had to react more. And coming back to what you said before, that Sampras could really raise his game at 4-all, 5-all when it was when it was really getting close toward the end of a set. He could do that against Agassi so many times, and you definitely had to say back in the day that Agassi was probably the player who had the best forehand and backhand combination in the game. But when Sampras was turning it on for 5 minutes in a few games, he was still not playing Agassi. That was so incredible to see, you know?
Yeah, it's one of the great rivalries for that reason. Contrast in personalities, in play style,
Yeah.
and you know, at I agree with you that when it comes to the serve, it was always in Pete's hands.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that how difficult it is to execute your game plan is something worth considering. And for Pete, I think it was a little bit easier to play perfect tennis than it was for Andre. And I think if you tie that to the modern game, I think it's a little bit easier now with the slower court surfaces. It's a little bit easier for Djokovic to play his game at the highest level than it is Federer. And I think we've seen that in their head-to-head.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right, Gil. Thanks a lot for coming onto the show and giving me the opportunity to have the discussion with you. I really have to say I enjoy the work you do on YouTube, in the sense that the way you analyze matches, the way you bring your technical understanding of the game for anybody who watches your channel, and what you've been doing lately and talking to people like Van Rothenberg, Amy Lundy, Steve Flink, Ian Eagle. I think those really are fantastic, and I'm really happy you're doing it. Maybe if this whole situation would be different and we would have the Barcelona Open going on right now, we wouldn't have this conversation. But even though we cannot have live tennis at the moment, I'm really happy that gave me or us the chance to make this short conversation, or maybe even it's a long conversation because we're going for 50 minutes already.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. There's some silver linings to this situation, and I'm really glad I could come on. It was great to hear your perspective on all of this, Tibor.
All right, thanks a lot, Gil. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Stay safe and good luck.
You too. Bye bye.